from hating Lyoto Machida for demanding Anderson Silva money to saying he's done doing business with Randy Couture. These are former UFC champions that Dana White hates. What better way for me to start off with none other than the Dragon? This guy was all set to take on Rashad Evans at UFC 133, but then he pulled a crazy move. He asked Dana White for Anderson Silva money, and Dana was not having it. According to White, Machida agreed to the fight at first, but when they called back to finalize things, Machida's team told Dana to pay Lyoto what he pays Anderson Silva, and then Machida's in. But Dana was fuming over the phone, and he told them to tell Machida to achieve the kind of stuff Silva has achieved, then maybe he can make that kind of money. He wasted no time in hanging up right after. Now here's the funny part. Machida and Silva actually made the same amount for their last fights before UFC 133. In fact, Machida even made more than Silva for the time he knocked out Randy Couture. But Lyoto still wanted that Silva money. And if it isn't common knowledge already, Dana White ain't a fan of fighters who want to make demands. He likes the ones who are down to throw down anytime, any place, no questions asked. So when the Dragon pulled this stunt, he was definitely on Dana's naughty list. Ever since then, "I want Anderson Silva money" has been a catchphrase in the MMA world, making fun of fighters who think they're worth more than they really are. But don't worry, because Dana also went for Silva himself next. When Silva announced his retirement after suffering a brutal TKO loss to Uriah Hall, turns out Anderson didn't exactly confirm his retirement like Dana wanted him to. And this got Dana all fired up. They had a deal when Silva signed his contract, and it was agreed that Silva had another fight left, but he decided to hang up his gloves instead. During the post-fight press conference for UFC Vegas 12, Dana let loose, saying he's always been good to Silva, treating him with respect and whatnot. So after Silva's little stunt, White confessed that he didn't feel too great about himself for letting Silva have that last fight. He regretted it big time, and went on to say that he's always treated Silva like one of his own. And if anyone knew the kind of money Silva rakes in for a fight, they'd all be shook. But the Spider also called out Dana for commenting on how fighters approach their fights when he himself has never stepped foot in the cage. Like that time when Silva played it safe and went for an overly safe game plan against Damian Maia, and Dana didn't approve of it. But that's not all. Silva also brought up when White decided to give his own 2 cents on another incident involving Manchester's own Brendan Loughnane. Apparently, Loughnane decided to shoot for a takedown instead of going for a flashy finish to secure a decision on the Contender Series, and Dana refused to sign the guy because of it. The Spider didn't hold back, saying that Dana has never fought MMA in his life, but still has a lot to say about other fighters. It's pretty much the same for Francis Ngannou, who had been publicly complaining about his deal with the UFC right before he left. Even though back in 2018, Dana and the Predator actually got along pretty well. Ngannou's talent was undeniable, and after defeating Andrei Arlovski and Alistair Overeem in 2017, White gave him a shot at the heavyweight championship at UFC 220. But things didn't go as planned for Francis. Stipe Miocic dominated him in the fight, and back-to-back losses hit Francis hard. So White did a complete 180 on the poor guy, publicly accusing him of having a huge ego and saying that his fame got to his head, which caused those 2 consecutive losses. Ouch! Fast forward to now, Francis had been making some noise about his deal with the UFC. He told everyone that during his negotiations with the promotion, he asked for 3 things besides increased pay, and they were all for the betterment of his fellow UFC fighters. He wanted fighters to have sponsorship rights, free health insurance, and an advocate to represent them in board meetings, but the company shut him down, saying no to all of his requests. They even had the audacity to tell him he could afford his own health insurance, while the fighters at the bottom struggled to make ends meet with their paychecks. Dana definitely doesn't like it when fighters dish out their contract complaints in public because he knows he pays his fighters peanuts compared to other sports leagues. Not only that, but Francis's interest in boxing also got White angry. The UFC ain't too keen on that, and even when they backed the Conor McGregor versus Floyd Mayweather fight, it was just to make more money. But Ngannou wants to tango with Tyson Fury, and that could be a mega payday for the dude. But the UFC wants nothing to do with it, not even if they could make a boatload of cash from it. Why, you ask? Because that fight would expose just how cheap Dana is with his fighters when it comes to payday, especially compared to boxing. Petty is Dana's middle name, and Chris Cyborg was another one of his first victims. Man, oh man, Dana couldn't wait to get rid of her. When UFC 240 came to an end, Cyborg's contract with the UFC was officially over, but Dana was so eager to bid her farewell that he even released her from the contractual matching period, saying that the UFC wanted nothing to do with Cyborg anymore. And guess what? Even Chris herself was thrilled to be done with the UFC and White's massive ego. You'd think this would be the end of their heated feud, but nope. Not at all. When Dana was asked about Cyborg, he went absolutely crazy on the former featherweight champ. He had a laundry list of reasons for why he let her go early, the main one being that dealing with Cyborg was a straight-up nightmare since day one. He even brought up the controversy surrounding Cyborg's first arrival in the UFC, saying that it was all a big mess, but he did it anyway. He mentioned how they brought her in after she tested positive for steroids, but they made her a clean athlete with the best drug testing policy. He even said he tried to make the Nunes fight happen, but Cyborg didn't want to be part of it. She straight up refused. And Dana said he doesn't blame her, because he's convinced that if Nunes had faced Chris, it would have been a total beatdown. Another iconic beef Dana has is with none other than Ken Shamrock. In fact, he's been on White's radar for quite a while. These two have had a rocky relationship because Ken tried to sue the UFC's parent company, Zuffa, after he claimed they released him from his contract early, but he failed at the suing attempt. Since then, things had simmered down between Dana and Ken. But all hell broke loose again when Ken went on a rampage against Dana on Twitter. Ken Shamrock took aim at Dana's treatment of fighters, especially the ones who helped build the UFC into the powerhouse it is today. He specifically called out Randy Couture, Tito Ortiz, and even Quentin Rampage Jackson, as well as his own half-brother Frank. Ken started talking about fighter pay, accusing Dana of not compensating fighters properly, the one thing Dana hates doing. Dana pointed out that Ken's whining about fighter pay doesn't add up and called him out for trying to make a comeback and become relevant again, trying to be every fighter's savior. He brought up how Ken tried to sue the UFC back in the day, and Dana wants his revenge for that. He said Ken owes him $175,000. Dana wants his money back, and he's ready to go after Ken for it. And he went on a fiery rant calling him all sorts of names. And finally, I can't let you forget about the legendary beef between Dana and Randy Couture. These two have had quite a roller coaster of a relationship over the years. After UFC 156, White didn't hold back when reporters asked him about Randy Couture's sudden leave from the company. He said he had zero respect for the five-time former champion. And according to Dana, Randy only acted like a man when he stepped into the cage. Once he stepped out, he was a completely different guy. But what's the real issue here? According to Dana, it all boils down to how Couture handled his exit from the UFC. Apparently, he randomly got a letter from Couture's lawyer during the holiday season, which said that Randy wouldn't be fulfilling his commentating duties for UFC on Fox 6. Dana tried calling Randy multiple times, but he just wouldn't pick up the phone. After 3 long hours, Randy finally texted back, and that's when things got heated. During their conversation, Randy told Dana he hadn't signed a deal with Spike and Bellator, but Dana was mad because Couture bailed on his last fight to go deal with other networks. And as far as Dana's concerned, he's done doing business with Randy. So, from saying he's done doing business with Randy Couture to hating Lyoto Machida for demanding Anderson Silva money, those were former UFC champions that Dana White hates.